All right, Big Ten football coaches hot seat power ranking. So I had this idea. I saw a lot of people talking about hot seat rankings, and so I went to a website and tried to figure out, who was on the hottest seat in the Big Ten. And I just felt like the rankings were completely awful. They had PJ Fleck at number 2. They had Deshaun Foster at number 17. I mean, like some of these ranks, I was like, okay, I just completely disagree with this, so I'm just going to make my own. Instead of commenting and telling them they're stupid, I'm just going to make my own. So I'm trying to mature, guys. I'm trying to do a better job of interacting with people online and not calling them stupid or morons.
There's only one entity you can call stupid.
Yes.
The NCAA. Okay,
yeah.
There we go.
Take that, Charlie Baker. Is it Baker or Barker?
I don't even know at this point.
Yeah. Charlie's stupid. That's his name. So anyway, Ryan Day is at number 1. And I say in the article that I wrote that I don't necessarily think he's on the hot seat, but I do think that if there's anybody this season that if he doesn't accomplish A, B, C, and D, I do think he's gone. I think Lincoln Riley is close, but I wouldn't even say Lincoln Riley is on the hot seat. I would say Lincoln Riley had a disappointing season last year, and he needs to do better than he did last year, and he needs to show that he's more than just a quarterback developer. But at the end of the day, like if he comes out and Miller Moss wins the Heisman and the team goes 10-2 or 9-3, like, I mean, if they have a season similar to LSU last year, I don't think USC fans are going to be mad. So these were really, really difficult rankings to put together. Max, I would love to know your thoughts on PJ Fleck and just the rankings overall.
Yeah, I know. I think PJ's at 12 mostly just because of his buyout stipulation that the University of Minnesota really can't afford to get rid of him at this point. So yeah, if money was no object, I think he would be higher just because just hasn't, the fan base probably would in general agree that the performance just hasn't been what it's needed to be.
He had a good year in 2022, but like, I think that most Minnesota fans would say that was the best one, and we've really not seen anything like it, right?
Right. And well, even like, I feel like the best year was 2019, and I feel like that still gets referenced.
Or maybe I'm thinking
2019. Like, that's 5 years ago, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like in his one out, I think is maybe the last, coming into this year, he's kind of got the out of like, well, we have to, there's turnover at quarterback, new defensive coordinator, all the changes in the Big Ten landscape. Like he's kind of got some outs right now to at least give him an extra year of leniency. But yeah, I personally would probably put him at least in the top 8 if I were to, I'm not paying his buyout, so I don't care.
Yeah, if money was no object, he'd be in the top 8. Yeah. And I think you can say that with a couple of guys on here as well. Russ, one guy who is in the top 8, Ryan Walters. I tell you, I have stuff, but I'm going to let you speak first.
I thought you were a fan of Ryan Walters, man. Now
I am a fan of Ryan Walters.
I guess you were ready to see him gone already. But no, I think this is a product of, it's a new Big Ten this year, right? Like obviously we're adding the 4 schools, which is the big storyline, but 9 of the 18 coaches, I think, are first or second year coaches, and so I don't think you see them get booted unless they're, absolutely terrible compared to what their expectations are. But there's really, I mean, you go Ryan Day, Lincoln Riley, I would probably have Brett Bielema third, but not because I think he's gone this year necessarily, but there's just not many guys I think that can do such a bad job they could get booted this year. There'd have to be off-season drama, which we had some with some coaches last year in the Big Ten, so that could happen. But as far as on-field performance, there's a narrative you can write for almost every one of these teams. If they have a bad season, well, this is why, and we need to see more next year. We don't need to boot them because of that. There's many narratives that can be written for a bad performance, and because of that, it doesn't put many of these guys truly on a hot seat.
Yeah, I totally agree. Brian Myers made a good comment here. He said, not hate seat. I guess hate seat too, but hot seat is a relative term. Day is fine as long as he beats Michigan. He's good. And like, that was my reasoning for putting him number 1. I don't see a single other guy on this list that his entire job comes down to one game this year other than Ryan Day. And so like, yeah, Lincoln Riley might be in a little bit more trouble. James Franklin might be in a little bit more trouble. I can't tell you if they were or not to administration, but at least to the fans, like Not many guys' entire job comes down to what seems like one game. And if Ryan Day doesn't win that one game, he doesn't win the Big Ten, and he doesn't win the national championship, which what's crazy is he couldn't not win the Big Ten, not beat Michigan, but still win the national championship, which is just crazy. I don't
What
think
if he
you can fire
loses
a guy
that game 3 times, though, as could happen with this format?
which fire him after the second one. Ryan Hartline in charge. I don't know. But it's just wild to me, Zach. You obviously follow Ohio State very closely as well. Do you agree that Ryan Day should be number one on these rankings?
Well, so I'm going to answer this in my typical, I have many thoughts on this. I think what's hard about this whole list, and I'm sure you felt this in making it, JR, is like there's no Scott Frost.
Yeah.
And what I mean is like, if he doesn't prove something in the first 3 games, he's gone.
Yeah.
I think there are Paul Christs on this list, but I think Max and Russ, you make good points that the buyouts are probably too high. And like, so I think Kirk Ferentz is actually a really good example. Like Iowa is never getting rid of Kirk Ferentz. Like it took them forever to get rid of Brian Ferentz, right? They're not getting rid of Kirk Ferentz. But like, I could see why they would to refresh the program. But like, I just don't think that's where a lot of programs are. Right. And I think Max, you brought up PJ Fleck, the buyout was really high with them. So that brings me to, I think Ryan Day, there's a storyline, a narrative that gets him fired. But my guess is even if that narrative comes true, it would take I think in my opinion, it would take a loss to Michigan and maybe even 7-5 or 8-4 with a loaded roster, or 9. If you miss the playoff and you lose to Michigan, so 9-3 and losing to Michigan.
I said in the article, if they lose to Oregon and Michigan, don't
you
make
think
the
they're
playoffs.
Done?
I think he's done.
You don't, even if he makes the playoff.
No, if he misses the playoff, does not win the Big Ten, and loses both of those games, I think he's done.
Yeah, I
which
think
is absolutely crazy because some people are ranking him the best coach in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
he's also number one on the hot seat too. Just absolutely insane.
Yeah, but even then, I think there's a world where you lose to Oregon and Michigan and still make the playoff, and very possibly make a run in the playoff, and he's fine.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley, yeah, and by fine, everybody in Columbus will hate him, but he'll be fine. But
the administration won't fire him.
Yeah. I think Lincoln Riley, there's a narrative. There's a narrative for sure that he could get fired. James Franklin, I think Penn State fans feel very stale, that he's very stale. The one I'll say 2, and Russ, you were onto something, I think, with Bielema. But I think Deshaun Foster and Brett Bielema, I think, could get the axe sooner. One, because I think Deshaun Foster, in some ways, he's a UCLA guy, but he was also, in a sense, a desperation hire. I know they have a lot of faith in him. But if they go 2-10, and they're we could get someone better, and we have time to make that decision, I think they could eject. And I think Brett Bielema, if they have another bad season, 3-9, 4-8 type of bad season. Yankee and Brian, I think, bring up a good point though. And this is with Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley, and maybe I'll throw it to you guys. Do you fire Ryan Day, even if he misses the playoff? Do you fire him? Who do you get? Who do you replace him with?
That's the question, right? That at the end of the day is a logical thing to think of. I can tell you right now, Ohio State fans, Yankee just pointed out right here, he says, guys, let me do you this favor right now. Please dispel yourselves any fear that Ohio State is losing at home to a Michigan team down 90% of their offense, their coach, and most of their staff. I'm just telling you right now, all of that plays into the emotions of Ohio State fans because Michigan has lost so many players. They have lost their staff, and it's going to be at home. And Ohio State has the loaded roster that they have. Yes, Brian Myers and Yankee make very good points, and Sky U Pod make very good points here. Who else do you hire? That's for the administration to think about. Ohio State fans will not think about that. Ohio State fans will say, you lost 4 years in a row. We don't care if there was some kind of cheating going on, allegedly, whatever. We don't care if that was happening. You still lost. And at the end of the day, it's yeah.
You're on to another shirt idea, JR. Ohio State fans will not think. That could be what we wear after. If
they are not rational. I am one of them. I understand.
Especially when we lose to Michigan.
Tony's asking here, is number 1 the hottest or number 18? Number 1 is the hottest in these rankings. I know that's kind of hard to see there. I was thinking of doing a fire meter or something like that, but I didn't have room for it. So Max, another guy to think about here. Russ, I'm going to ask you about Deshaun Foster here in a second, but Max, I know you know a thing or two about the Wisconsin program. Is Luke Fickell at 4 here accurate? What do you think?
Compared to everyone else, I think it's fair. I mean, like you said earlier, you could probably shuffle around 4 through 8, I guess, and it could really make sense. You can make a fair argument. I think Wisconsin fans, Luke Fickell came in as one of these top coaching candidates. He was supposed to change Wisconsin into this new high flying offense and get all these top recruits and get all this talent coming in. And it's kind of been flat, and there's been no signs of improvement. Tanner Mordecai last year coming in. Now he's got Tyler Van Dyke coming in. There's a lot of turnover at the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. The defense, Wisconsin's always been known for their defense, and even that struggled. So it's I feel like he's lost a lot of that Wisconsin identity. So from the fan standpoint, I'm sure they're thinking he's maybe even higher. But I guess we'll see how it goes this year.
Yeah. Another thought here from Brian. Is Lanning overhyped? What has he done exactly? Here's my answer for Lanning. And Russ, if you want to comment on this, or Deshaun Foster, I'll open it up to either one for you. But my thing with Lanning is he just lost to Washington twice last year, didn't win his conference, and you still have Oregon fans in every single YouTube video, every single podcast, every single rankings on Twitter being like, Dan Lanning should be number 2, number 3 in the nation. He's the second best. He's the third best coach in the nation. And it's he just lost to Kalen DeBoer twice last year, your hated rival. Meanwhile, Ryan Day, if he lost to Michigan twice in 1 year, they'd be burning him at the stake. So I'm not saying anything here about Oregon and Ohio State fans. I think that both are kind of delusional in their own little way. But if I'm looking at the way Oregon fans are reacting and the way the NIL is going for Oregon right now, honestly, Dan Lanning could go 0-12 this year, and I think he'd be fine. I don't think he's getting fired if he goes 0-12 this year. Because I think they would look at it and they would be like, oh, yep, it was Dylan Gabriel's fault. We'll bring in Dante Moore and we'll be fine. I don't know. They'll blame somebody else, it seems like.
Yeah,
if you have an example right there that Ohio State fans are not rational, right? Because Dan Lanning's basically the West Coast version of Ryan Day, right? Very successful, great national, record and, ranking, but lost their rival twice in 1 year. But he's 18th on this list while Ryan Day is first.
Exactly. Nobody's rational. We're all crazy. Zack.
I did make one discovery. I kind of hinted at it in the chat, but I wanted to throw it in here first. So Tom Allen, right? IU's not exactly a football power. You would think that they'd just be happy if they could win a couple of games and get 10,000 people in the stands. But they fired Tom Allen last year. What his buyout was? Any chance?
Wasn't it $12 million or it was one of the third highest buyouts in college football, wasn't it?
So it was actually $20.8 million, but they negotiated it down to about 15.5. So I think we also got to readjust. I kind of changed my mind mid, while Zack was going there. I kind of looked that up and kind of changed my mind on that. That I don't think buyouts mean a whole lot when you're getting 70, 80, however many million a year just from TV revenue. a $10 million buyout is nothing if you want to go win in college football and you think you got a coach that can get you somewhere better than what your current guy is. I don't think maybe these guys are as safe as what, we think they are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Zack, Drufus here brings up somebody else in the rankings who's smack dab in the middle. He says, how can Smash? I feel like I need to do like some kind of motion every time if they're going to start calling him Smash. I don't know. Smash, I assume he means Sherrone Moore. Where he is, he just got there. I'll give my reasoning, and then Zack, you give me your thoughts. So I wrote in the article that I do think that there is some expectations for Sherrone Moore, but at the end of the day, when you look at the guys who were ahead of him, they just got there and they came away from terrible situations where I feel like if Jonathan Smith went 3-9, or if Kirk Cignetti went 3-9 this year, or Jed Fish, if he went 3-9 this year, they would almost like have an out and people wouldn't be too upset about it. If Sherrone Moore went 3-9 this year, I'm not saying that Michigan fans would be like ready to burn him at the stake, but I do think that Michigan fans would be saying like, okay, this guy's never been a head coach before. He was a great offensive coordinator for us, and he was definitely a part of that national championship. But did maybe we, put him up too soon? Because that was kind of like my thought process for a lot of these guys. If somebody goes 3-9, what is the thought going to be next year? Because like I said, really the only guy who's in danger of being fired at the end of the year is most likely Ryan Day, maybe Lincoln Riley, but really Ryan Day seems to be the most one that's a concern there. Zack, would you agree with that? What are your thoughts?
I'll there's one other thought I had with outside of Sherrone Moore, but I think Sherrone Moore has done no favors with who he has to follow and with the current expectations. Because I think the national media, like we just saw, I think it was Joel Klatt's top 25, he had Michigan 8th. And regardless of what actually happens, like if you like, I would not be surprised if in the AP, they're in the AP top 10, AP top 15 at the start of the year. And regardless of how dumb preseason polls are, like people use that as a metric. And then you're following a really great head coach that won a won Michigan's first national championship in 26 years. And, if you go 6-6 your first year, that really puts you in a bad way. And I'm not saying they'll go 6-6, but like that really.
Well, their win total's at 9.5. I mean,
yeah. So
the Michigan win total. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if they go 7-5, 8-4, even then, like you're like, is this what we're signing up for? That can really put a sour taste in your mouth. And so like I think this year he's fine. Like I think he gets a mulligan year regardless, unless if it just goes completely off the rails, or it's found out that he was complicit in something and is, that's a whole nother podcast. The other one, I am not a Loxley guy, and I can see the appeal because of his recruiting, but I feel like he does less with more all the time. And maybe that's just my own personal perception, but I'm like the loss to Northwestern last year, feels like sums up for me how I feel about Loxley is like, I feel like we talk about you beating the big three of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State every year, and instead you lose to Northwestern. Why are you still employed?
It happens.
Get bodied.
Yeah, So my thing with Mike Loxley was, number one, Maryland fans don't care about football. He could go 3-9 there, and Maryland fans would say, when does basketball season start?
You could say that about IU and Indiana, and they just got rid of their coach. So yeah, maybe. But the other piece there is that since 2019, every full season, so excluding 2020, every full season, Mike Loxley has either improved the record or kept the record the same. And so when I first started this list, I had Mike Loxley up at like 4. And I thought, okay, this guy, he is doing less with more. And then I looked at this and I was like, oh, but he hasn't had a year where he finished worse than the year prior. So like he's raising it until he goes 3-9 or 4-8 or misses a bowl. I don't really know if I can put him anywhere near
the top 5. I felt like I was kind of down on him at 8 because of how much Maryland fans don't care about football. And at the end of the day, he's been improving. So, I mean, and that's the whole thing with Ryan Day. Ryan Day is the number 1 coach in the conference, and Ohio State fans care so much about beating one team on their schedule that if he doesn't beat them this year, he's gone, right? Like, I mean, obviously other things have to happen. We talked about that, but I just, the truth is none of these coaches are most likely going to be fired this year. Ryan Day is probably the one that's most at risk. And all of them have a different story. Kirk Ferentz is never going to be fired by Iowa. He will be told to leave so he can retire, but he's never going to be fired. They are never going to tell him, Kirk Ferentz, you need to, we're kicking you out right now. They'll do that to his son, but like they would ask him to resign before they actually fire him.
Yeah. If I can just, because I see a lot of people in the comments being like, how did you come up with this list, JR? Because this has kind of been your brainchild. I think it's important to remember that this is a contextualized conversation. So like, it's not just like it really matters where you coach. It matters the administration. It matters the story. And like all those things matter. And so I think to your point, like Ryan Day being number 1, I think a lot of people are looking at this list and like, how do you have Ryan Day one? But we're saying who is in the most danger? And the reality is a lot of these coaches really aren't in danger, but there are pathways where they will be in danger.
Yeah.
And the big, like, I do appreciate what you're saying about Ryan Day in particular, is that there is one Saturday in November that will make that seat a lot hotter if he loses. And I don't think you can't say that about any other coach on this list.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's nobody else on this list that one Saturday is going to define, their coaching job. Sorry, Russ, go ahead.
I was saying, and then one Saturday in December again, and then one Saturday in January, and then at that point, then it's full on inferno in Columbus. Yeah.
That's accurate.
If we're taking shots here, I'll take a shot too, like Zack did there. My Mike Loxley is Matt Rhule. I don't understand the hype. I don't understand the grace that's been given to him on the heels of losing 4 straight winnable games and missing a bowl game. I get that it was year 1, but I mean, if you're an NFL fan, the Panthers experiment was not great. Wasn't great. And he had really one good year at Baylor and bolted for the NFL. And yeah, he did a great thing at Temple, but that's Temple. That's not the Big Ten. That's not the SEC. So, I think that the fan base could really turn on him fast if it doesn't go the way they want it to. Because, 5-7, and you were happy at 5-3 at that point. You thought, hey, he's really doing something great here. Can't wait to see what he does. But, Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech, Illinois, Northwestern, my Purdue team, like that was your wins. Like it wasn't like you went and you really beat somebody when you had to beat somebody to win one game to go to bowl game. You couldn't get it done. So, I think that, he's got the talent. He's got the people that coming in that everybody's excited about. If he doesn't do, more with that, he's going to be that Loxley doing less with more instead of more with less.
And I don't disagree with you, Russ. I think there are a few factors with Nebraska why I had Matt Rhule a little bit lower than maybe you and some other people think. I think getting Dylan Raiola was huge for the fan base and their excitement for him. And I also think his past with Temple and Baylor offers a lot of hope for the future and what can happen. Like, even if Matt Rhule goes 5-7 again this year, I feel like the Nebraska fan base is going to be like, we really want to fire another coach. Like, let's just give him time. He brought in Dylan Raiola. He has Tony White. Like, let's just give him some time. Now, if Tony White moves on, maybe a different story, but yeah.
I've also heard a lot of Nebraska fans.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, Russ. I'm just looking at the fan base and saying, I don't think they think the same way we do.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of them that don't want another Scott Frost either, though.
That's true.
They gave Scott Frost a lot of leash thinking it was going to turn around, and it ended up just being a really, really painful era for them.
Yep.
That's true. That's true.
They will turn on him if it's another 3-9 season with 8 one-score losses. That
Accurate.
I don't think their hearts can take that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
accurate.
I think if I were a Nebraska fan, I don't know what I'd do with that.
I'm going to go through a few comments really fast, and then we'll get out of here, guys. Sonny, friend of the show, JR comes up with graphics where you could put Ohio State or something to do with Ohio State number 1. This is 2 weeks in a row now. Yes, Sonny, you are correct. Last week I had Ohio State number 1 and the best teams to never win the Big Ten, and I have Ryan Tatum. I was actually going to reference that Sonny here and say, see, Sonny, I'm not biased, but Sonny has found a loophole to say that. So Young Bucket says Brett Bielema needs to be higher. He has the highest chance of getting fired, needs to make a bowl at least. I think Illinois fans love Brett Bielema. I think 2 years ago they loved it, and I think that last year they have a little bit of excuse, and I think they're high on him. Maybe I'll be proved wrong at the middle of the year if it doesn't look like he's going to a bowl, but everything I hear from Illinois fans, they seem to be happy with him. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but let's see. Yankee Lincoln, better hope it's 70 and sunny November 2nd in the big house. Thankfully for Lincoln, I don't think his entire coaching career is depending on that one game. He's got a few other games, LSU, Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame, that might be a bit more dependent there. But in casual Big Ten, hot seat rankings, 1, any seat Russ is sitting on because he spits fire every time he speaks.
Boom.
There you go. You got
That's
Dylan
all
the
we're not
hater and Kent the hyper up there for you, Russ.